Now, as is tradition, let's start the show off with Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge Knapp, how you doing today?
I'm fine, Joey. How are you, my dear friend?
Doing quite well. So, your initial reaction to all this this impeachment inquiry beginning?
Well, the alleged impeachment activity occurred when he was vice president. Can he be impeached today for an office he doesn't hold? Well, we know the answer to that is yes. The second impeachment of Donald Trump occurred after he had left office. Can he be removed from the presidency for conviction upon an impeachable event that occurred while he was vice president? No. He can only be removed from the office he held at the time, which of course he doesn't hold anymore. So what is the purpose of the impeachment? Well, twofold. One is to expose to the country what the Republican investigators say is a pattern of criminal behavior while he was vice president. Just as an aside, the statute of limitations has run. So even if they demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt the commission of a crime while he was vice president, it was more than 5 years ago, he can't be prosecuted. But secondly, if he is impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate can bar him from ever seeking public office again, which may be moot if he comes to his senses and just goes home to Delaware. But since he is determined to want to seek another term in office, it could be quite relevant. All of this adds to the incredible, not once in a lifetime of a nation, perfect storm of legal events and political events in 2024. Donald Trump facing the likely Republican nominee facing 4 criminal prosecutions, and now Joe Biden, the incumbent president and likely Democratic nominee, facing an impeachment in the House.
It's absolutely crazy times. And just to play into that idea of this storm, it's almost like, in part, Biden is going to be impeached for the thing Trump was trying to look into, on the perfect phone call. So the thing Trump was impeached for, the House Republicans are now looking to impeach Biden for.
It is almost literally, you're quite right, it's almost literally the very same events. The allegation the Democrats made against Trump was that he was seeking a bribe. He was seeking to have Joe Biden investigated by a Ukrainian prosecutor in return for the federal government giving Ukraine $400 million worth of military equipment. Seems like a drop in the hat now. We since have given them over $100 billion. But now it appears as though there was enough evidence there to have investigated Joe Biden. The Ukrainians didn't do it, and now the House investigators will.
Well, we'll see where this goes, and adding to this legal perfect storm, maybe even just a huge constitutional crisis. Lately, folks have been putting an argument out about the 14th Amendment and Donald John Trump. In particular, I believe it's Lawrence Tribe of Harvard and Judge Ludwig. They're saying that you don't even need enforcing legislation. This could be done and triggered by any sort of government official. It seems, I don't know how to make sense of that. What's your read on this 14th Amendment argument they're throwing out there?
The argument has odd origins because the origins of it are two very well-regarded, highly regarded academics who are political conservatives and part of the Federalist Society movement. Justice Thomas is Federalist Society, Justice Alito is Federalist Society, Justice Kavanaugh is. But these conservatives, Judge Ludwig, a Reagan appointee to the Fourth Circuit and on 2 short lists for the Supreme Court during his tenure on the bench, he's since retired. These conservative academics are of the view that throughout history, individual state and local officials who were in charge of the ballot kept people off whom they knew or had reason to believe had engaged in insurrection. In this case, the Civil War. Okay, we saw you in a Confederate uniform. You can't run for governor of New Jersey. An example like that. I don't need a trial to prove it. We all saw you in a Confederate uniform. The 2 academics have come up with hundreds and hundreds of instances of that throughout history, from which they conclude that the 14th Amendment is self-executing, meaning you don't need to prove the case as long as in a court of law, as long as the administrator of the election is satisfied that you did something to aid an insurrection, that administrator can keep you off the ballot. Now, I profoundly disagree with this. It's nothing to do with my views of Trump. I disagree with it because they couldn't possibly be that that's what the amendment wanted, that somebody who read something on the internet, which of course didn't exist in 1868 when the amendment was ratified, or heard something in the news can use their power to block somebody from getting on the ballot. There has to be due process. In Trump's case, even if he's convicted of all four of those cases, even if he's convicted of every charge in all four of those cases, none alleges insurrection or aid to insurrection. So this will end up in the Supreme Court, and my prediction is the Supreme Court will be on the same page that I am on this. My prediction also is that it'll get to the Supreme Court very late because nobody really has standing to sue until their name, like Trump, has been blocked from the ballot. There have been a lot of lawsuits already. People that hate Trump have sued to keep his name off the ballot. People that love Trump have sued to keep his name on the ballot. All those suits get thrown out because none of those people has standing unless and until one of them is a nominee and that person's name is struck, which means the Republicans would have to nominate Trump and some state secretary of state would have to bar his name. Then Trump and the Republicans would have a basis to bring a federal lawsuit, but not before.
Yeah, and what a perfect storm, like you said, and what a car crash. I mean, where does this end up? It seems like, because, you see, God forbid, what's happening with Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, the older generation kind of stepping aside. It seems like this new generation wants to begin things with a bang, like a car crash here.
Well, one of the Republican candidates for president, it might have been Nikki Haley, I'm not sure, said, the Senate is the most pampered senior citizens home in the country. I suppose you could throw Joe Biden into that mix and maybe Donald Trump, although Trump, notwithstanding his age, shows no sign of it. He is filled with energy and with, by his standards, mental acuity. I'm not going to go there, but he can certainly complete a paragraph, which Joe Biden has difficulty completing. When Trump kiddingly says the man can't put two sentences together, that's no joke. So, but you can't add to the qualifications for president. I mean, that's another thing involving the 14th Amendment. There are only three qualifications for president: over 35 years of age, born in the United States, and have lived in the United States for at least 14 years before running for office. If there were a fourth, did not participate in an insurrection, it would have to be precisely into that qualifications clause, and it's not there.
Right, and also just common sense. Like when I saw the comparisons of what happened January 6, 2021, I didn't think it was like 9/11. I thought it was a bad day, but it wasn't 9/11. And when I see, okay, the 14th Amendment is put in right after the Civil War, what happened on January 6th, again, bad, but not the same thing as the Civil War. Like, this seems absurd on its face.
I'm surprised you're calling it the Civil War instead of the war between the states, given where you are located, young man. And I'm not critical of you because we're all taught it's the Civil War, but a civil war is a fight between domestic groups for control of the central government. This was not a fight for the control of the central government. The South wanted the central government to go away and leave it alone.
And you might say the fact that the Confederates didn't want to rule Boston maybe suggests why they lost. So it's a whole thing here. But I want to now go to your op-ed last week because the title alone just caught my attention. The CIA in your underwear?
Well, you may think that I'm crazy or just eccentric, but if you Google DNI, which is the Director of National Intelligence, and be a little patient in navigating through their website, you'll find a presentation made to the DNI by outside companies manufacturing textiles, which when sewn into shirts, pants, socks, and underwear, will allow the CIA to monitor the movement, the physical location, and the communication of the wearer of that clothing. She, the director of DNI, the nominal boss of the 17 federal spying agencies, 17, announced to Congress while Congress was on its summer break that she had just spent $22 million having these textiles developed, and they were beginning to experiment with them. You know, the last time I wrote something about this, everybody roared, including my then bosses at Fox, thinking I was crazy. The title of the column was, "Is the CIA in Your Kitchen?" And it turned out that General Petraeus, who was the head of the CIA at the time, gave a speech that he thought was going to be secret, saying that CIA outside vendors had found a way to log on to the computer chips in your microwave oven and your dishwasher. And if you are close enough to the oven and the dishwasher in your kitchen and having a conversation, the CIA can hear it. Now, what about search warrants? What about the Fourth Amendment? The CIA doesn't give a damn about search warrants or the Fourth Amendment. They just couldn't care less. That's the problem. The CIA doesn't give a damn about its charter, which expressly prohibits it from spying on Americans in the United States, even in aid of law enforcement. The CIA and their other 16 federal spying agencies have an appetite for surveillance, which is voracious. They have a respect for human dignity, which is non-existent. They have fidelity for the Constitution, which is non-existent. And nobody does anything about it. Has anybody in Congress complained about it? Has Joe Biden stopped payment on the checks? No and no.
I believed it when I heard about the microwave thing. It just made too much sense. I kind of realized I need to live my life like I'm Orson Welles under surveillance from the FBI and just do a radio show all day. Just knowing if they want to, they can listen. So it doesn't surprise me, but do you think more and more Americans are getting it, that there is essentially a shadow government that is unelected, that seems a lot more powerful than the elected parts of our government, and they're going to use whatever means they can?
I do not think the American public is getting it. I think the American public has given up the ghost on privacy, and that's one of the reasons that Congress keeps budgeting these things and doesn't do anything about it. You know, there are progressives on the left in the Congress. There are libertarians on the right, and occasionally the twain does meet. Rand Paul and Senator Wyden, Bernie Sanders and Congressman Massey. I mean, AOC and Congressman Massey. Occasionally these people agree on these things, but the vast majority of everybody in Congress is the warfare, welfare, national security state party, which keeps doing the same thing over and over again, couldn't care less about the Bill of Rights. I also think the deep state has a lot of dirt on members of Congress, and that's another reason that their powers just keep getting extended. We'll find out soon when Section 702 of FISA is up for reenactment before Christmas. That's the section that purports to allow the spying community, the intelligence community, to spy on foreign persons in the U.S. without warrants, even if that spying picks up the communications with Americans.
It's such a shame. And then from watching Judging Freedom yesterday, in particular your interview with McGregor, that it's just sobering seeing we might get another, almost Gulf of Tonkin, maybe even worse, with this playing, saber rattling there in the Black Sea.
Does the American public know that the U.S. Navy and the British Navy are going to engage in war games in the Black Sea? This would be like the Russian and Chinese Navy engaging in war games somewhere between Los Angeles and Catalina Island off the West Coast, or just about 15 miles off of Montauk, which is the easternmost point of Long Island. How do you think we would react to that?
Not too kindly. And
what is the U.S. thinking? Are they looking for a Gulf of Tonkin, which of course never happened, it was made up, right? But are they looking to poke the bear? If they do poke the bear, and if the bear responds, we will lose. That's their territory. That's where they have critical mass of military equipment, not us. And what would the war be over? Whether or not Ukrainian ships can take grain through Turkish territory? Do we really want to fight a war over that?
All right. Well, and this is the sort of great analysis, but sobering analysis that you find on Judging Freedom. I tend to watch on YouTube, wherever podcasts are available, folks. And you can also always go to judgenap.com. And Judge, until next week, I really appreciate your time. We'll talk again soon.
Pleasure, my man. All the best to you.
Thank you, sir. Again, that's Judge Andrew Napolitano. Always great having him here on the program.